Good evening, Monarch fans, and welcome to another edition of Sports Talk with Rags here in Season 3, Episode 73. And today, here we are joined by Monarch alum Rashid Wright. And when I have a Monarch alum on a Monday, it is Monarch Mondays here on Sports Talk with Rags. So, Rashid, how you doing this evening?
Man, I'm doing well. I appreciate you having me, and I'm glad we were able to find some time to do this.
Yes, I appreciate your time, and like we talked about in our off times before we started taping. I mean, this has been a fun hobby, but with having work and day to day life, I know that I've been wanting you to come on, but just taking the time to reach out to you, and our schedules finally matched up.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you asked me some questions, and I'll get to tell the viewers like how busy my days are. But like I said, like I'm getting down to ODU or doing anything ODU Monarch affiliated things. I haven't been able to do that much of it, and so I jumped at this because I want to stay connected. I want to get closer to the university, come back down some more football games. With me being here in the Richmond area, not too far away, but life is lifing.
Right. That's right. Hey, and you know what? It's definitely great to have some Monarch blood there in the 804 that we don't have to mention the big rival that's there on Broad Street. you
Oh
know?
yeah, all right. And that has taken some getting used to. Like all this black and gold, even the youth program that I run right now, our colors are black and gold, and I mean, I've had to kind of like bow down a little bit. It's all around me, but as I've had the opportunity to play with some of those guys overseas and build some relationships with some of those BCU Rams, but it still makes my blood boil a little bit.
Right. Yeah, yeah. And the thing is it doesn't. I mean, I know that the rivalry is deep, but it's not really as on fire as when it was same conference, and the basketball programs definitely played twice during the regular season, and then pretty much met up in the conference tournament. Now we're just happy to at least play once during the regular season since not in the same conference anymore.
Yeah, it's not the. I've been home from France for 7 years.
Yeah.
And I still don't understand like where all the schools are, what conference is stronger than what conference. I mean, it's all been twisted around, but for sure, back in the old CAA days, those were dog fights.
Yeah. Yeah. And one more before we start talking about your basketball days. I mean, a long time friend of my brother's, back Mike Ragsdale, my brother, playing high school baseball against Marty Plank, that then they also faced each other there in college as my brother went to William and Mary. But I know that Marty, their ODU alum, definitely lives there close to you.
It's funny. I just talked to him last week.
Oh, you did?
Yes, yes. We're doing the same thing. We're playing cat and mouse a little bit, trying to figure out a time for our schedules to link so I can start working with his son. We
Right.
just spoke. Yeah, we just spoke
Yeah.
last week, man. So yeah, that's funny that you bring his name up.
Hey, man, definitely a small world.
Yep, yep.
So, well, hey, let's start here with your basketball story. What was it like here growing up there in the Greensboro area and around the game of basketball?
Well, I mean, everything I want to preface everything I say with I'm biased.
Yeah,
But North Carolina is a basketball state. Basketball is a religion in North Carolina. Of course, Michael Jordan being from North Carolina and all the great players who've come from North Carolina. You have Carolina, Duke, NC State right there in the triangle. And then being from Greensboro, the
right,
ACC tournament came there every year, right?
right,
So every year around ACC tournament time, the games were on the TVs in every classroom. Everybody were wearing their colors of the team they preferred. It was just a really, really big deal. And my dad loved basketball. He's the one to put the ball in my hand. So I've loved basketball for as long as I can remember. I mean, it probably is my first love.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. And, the thing is, and my wife and I, we've been to Greensboro Coliseum for a couple concerts, but, with Norfolk to Greensboro, I mean, it's pretty sad to live in the Norfolk area since '87. And yeah, I still haven't been to ACC tournament there in Greensboro.
Right. It's a
It's
it's a it's another world. It's another world. My wife is from Virginia, and I remember the first time that she got to kind of experience what that's like. She thought that we were crazy in North Carolina. She was like, "Hold on," but like everybody's pressuring me to choose a team. I'm like, I don't have a team. They're like, you got to have a team, right?
right.
Nah, it is. We are very serious about basketball in North Carolina.
Yeah. So, I know that we're around the same age and, definitely, travel AAU, wasn't as big, when we were growing up as it is today. But, what led you to come play for Coach Capel, be a Monarch, and the Capel family being from North Carolina?
Well, interesting. A lot of things happened at the right time. I would say first thing is the summer going into my junior year, I played for AAU program called Kappa Magic out of Winston-Salem, North Carolina. And the
Okay.
coach of that program, his name is John Allen. I mean, he's one of my mentors. He's somebody who I still speak to this day. And he's the first person that exclusively put me on the wing. I could
Oh,
always shoot, but before then, I'm 6'4", 6'5". I play hard. I can rebound. I'll bang. Decently athletic. He saw me shooting one day after practice with my dad. And he was like, "You can shoot?" And I was like, "Yeah, I can shoot." He said, "You're a two guard, right?" And so
right,
that summer, he put me on the wing. So that was good and bad, right?
right,
Because now I found myself with way more opportunities to shoot. But I
right,
really hadn't been working on attack moves, bringing the ball up the court. I mean, so it's kind of feast or famine a little bit. And I end up hitting a shot in the state tournament to win a game
mm,
against a team that had Scooter Sherrill on it. And my confidence just went to a whole nother level.
right.
And so I rode that wave into the Nationals that were in Greensboro, oddly
Oh wow.
enough, that year, right? So the name of our team was Kappa Magic. Well, Coach Capel was a Kappa.
Oh, okay.
So he came to the national. All this happened like he comes to the national and he sees this team called Kappa Magic, and so he
Right,
says, "Hey, I want to go watch him play."
right.
And so when he comes out, I mean, I that summer I just was having a great summer. I was, jump shot was on, competing at a high level, getting above the rim. We're beating teams that we shouldn't beat. We're the little engine that could, right? So that underdog story is something that I'm very familiar with. And on top of that, Coach Capel was the coach at North Carolina A&T when
Yeah.
I was growing up.
Okay.
And then Lil Jeff was at
Yeah.
Duke. And
Right.
Jason is only a year older than us. So when I'm coming up, Jason was at Greensboro Day School.
Right.
Jeff was at Duke. I forgive him for that because, you got to be a Carolina fan or a Duke fan coming up in North Carolina. And we already know, God's favorite color is Carolina blue. So,
Right.
um, but then Coach Capel had an unbelievable run. They almost beat Arkansas
Right.
in the tournament that year, and that was a big deal. So once I got to the point where I was getting recruited and colleges were talking to me, I was very familiar with Coach Capel and his family. My best friend, Ricardo Marsh, who we
Yeah.
met around that same time, was also getting recruited by Old Dominion. And so
Okay.
that's what led me in that direction. And then, of course, also coming on my visit and seeing the water in Virginia Beach and
Hey.
the metropolitan area that is Norfolk, and at that time, I'm not sure if it still is. Norfolk was Old Dominion was the most diverse school in the state, and so there were a
Mm.
lot of things that attracted me to Old Dominion.
Yes, and Rashid, with you growing up in Greensboro and starting off, talking about the ACC tournament and and what it was like when the tournament was going on. I thought that during this conversation we would know what your school, what you were a fan of down there, especially with the couple schools going down Tobacco Road.
Right, right. And oddly enough, Shammond Williams is now a coach at Old Dominion on the girls' side. So, and
That's
I
right.
had a conversation. Yeah, I had a conversation with him not too long ago. So, yeah, I grew up. I'm a big Michael Jordan fan, big Carolina fan. I remember in high school, every time Carolina would play Duke, my friends would come over to my house. We'd all be sitting in there, half of us Duke, half of us Carolina, talking junk back and forth. So yeah, that's a big part of my whole basketball mindset. And of course, like all other kids, I wanted to play in the ACC. I wanted to play big time basketball, but I was kind of a late bloomer. I
Mm.
kind of jumped on the scene late, and I had some of the bigger schools that were asking me to wait for that second signing period my senior year. And some of the best advice I got was from a guy named Bob Smith, who was a recruiter at the time, to just let me know that, like, hey, like the schools that have been here early and have been here consistently are the ones that you probably can come in and play now. The ones that are coming in late, you probably weren't their first option if they're asking you to wait. And do you want to play your senior year with that pressure, or do you want to, kind of go ahead and get this done and just play your senior year with a clear mind? And I decided to do the latter.
Yeah, and and so coming, when you were coming to be a Monarch, Coach Capel, Coach Corrigan, was on his staff, and and that was also the time where Monarch basketball, for both the men and the women's side, they were looking to, for the men, looking for on campus arena, and for the women, to play in a bigger, arena there on campus. So, when you came in to be part of the Monarchs, I mean, that was one of the last seasons that the full time home court was Norfolk Scope.
Yes. Now, the Convocation Center was definitely part of the recruiting package. I thought that I would play in that my sophomore year. Now, thank
Mhm.
God I was able to play in it my senior year. But yeah, we definitely were working our way out of Scope and Fieldhouse. That transition was happening while I was there, and shout out to Coach Corrigan too. Coach Corrigan is actually the coach who was recruiting me.
Okay.
I've kept in contact with him over these years, even professionally overseas, and even up until last year when he was at Virginia Tech, I had a phone
Right.
conversation. So he's somebody that has always been a great friend, a great mentor, always been open and honest with me, somebody I could trust, I consider him somebody near and dear to me.
Yeah, yeah, and when also, when they opened the doors there at the Constant Center, which now Chartway Credit Union, has the naming right, so it's Chartway Arena. But back to the school that you were a fan of, I mean, how cool was that to be a Monarch, to play at the Constant Center, and on the other side is Carolina Blue.
Man, it was a dream come true. I actually scored the first, not the first official basket in the exhibition game. I scored the first 2 points. But
Okay.
our first 2 points in that Carolina game was Blaine. Coach Taylor had drew. We knew that Carolina was going to jump trap us. We practiced that, throw it to the middle, dump it to Ricardo for a dunk. We had the artificial sound in there. We had already visualized how those first 2 points were going to go, and it happened just like that. It was amazing, man. And I think we ended up losing by like 7 points, 9 points, or something like that. That was the McCants, Sean May, Raymond Felton team that were freshmen that year. We had a really good chance of beating them. I mean, we had a good team our senior year. Alex Loudon and Isaiah Hunter and some of those guys were freshmen. And me and Ricardo both knew that, by their junior year, they're going to the tournament. They were a little too young their freshman year and our senior year, but we knew there was the makings of something special.
Yeah, and then also, Coach Corrigan was a consistent coach there from Coach Capel's staff to Coach Taylor's staff, but also coming in, played for Coach Capel, and then the last 2 years, got to play under Coach Taylor's
Yeah.
leadership.
Yep.
Yeah.
Two completely different styles.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm just being honest, I went there mainly for Coach Capel.
Right.
And so then after my sophomore year, to know that I wasn't going to be playing for him anymore, I did think about transferring. I had to sit down and kind of figure out what I thought was best for me. But I talked to my parents about it, and they said give Coach Taylor a chance. And when he came in, man, he came in like a tornado, man. Like his expectations were high. He had standards that he wanted us to meet. It was challenging. But in retrospect, it probably was one of the best things that happened to me. As a shooter, everything he taught me about coming off screens, footwork, shot pocket, ball positioning, how to get the ball out of my hands quicker, the IQ part of the game of how to see it and dissect it, not only from an offensive standpoint, but from a defensive standpoint. I blossomed my junior and senior year, and those same skills that I learned from him helped carry me through 13 years of professional basketball. And even today now, teaching kids, coaching on the high school level and running a youth basketball program, a lot of those same things that I learned from him, watch him do in building a program, but also in how to help develop players, I still use to this day.
Nice. And that's the thing, Rasheed. It's with having Mike Byers and Mario Mullen, who's currently, when I had him on, he was coaching down here in Virginia Beach, and and Odell and Mike Jones. I mean, other basketball alums that I've had on, especially with the Drew Williamson, the Monarch alums that I've had, is they just talk about their head coaches, their assistant coaches, and just not only how they were mentors, but then how they've used what they learned as student athletes to put in practice as you guys are coaching, the future players nowadays.
Yeah, I call it life school.
Yeah.
And I really, it's so many parallels between sport and life. Basketball is my expertise, and so for a long time I considered myself a basketball player, but now I realize that basketball just happened to be the tool that helped me to see different countries, learn another language, have different experiences, and now helps me to teach life skills to the next generation of kids. And so I think any good coach, they leave their imprint on their players. And so Coach Capel and Coach Taylor, both of those men, I've learned an incredible amount of knowledge from, that I implement today, and I'm very thankful.
Yeah. Yeah. And talk about, after, once you graduated from Old Dominion, you had the opportunity of playing overseas. And, I came across, with doing some research here for this episode, I came across an article on ODU Sports, I think 2016, 2017, that you were interviewed, and you talked about playing professionally overseas for 13 years.
Yeah, it was. I was like everybody else. I had scored 1,000 points in college. Had a successful individual career. I would say not the winning that I wanted. I played a game to win, and so got invited to the PIT pre-draft camp. Threw my hat in there to try to make it to the NBA like everybody else. Played in some European exposure camps. And ran across a French agent that saw me play and thought I had had what it took to make a professional team overseas. And once I got over there, I started in Saint-Vallier, France. And I played my first 3 years there. Went on and played in Paris. Then I played in Vichy. Then I played 4 years in a city called Poitiers. Played in Saint-Quentin. Played in Toulon, France, in the south. Went back to Saint-Quentin. And then I finished my career, my last 2 years back where I started in Saint-Vallier. So it came full circle. But that that was the best experience that I could have had, man. I have 4 daughters. 2 of my daughters were born there. French is still my second language. I have friends that I met there that I consider family. I mean, it just living outside of the United States changed my life. It changed my mindset. It changed how I view so many things. And if I was all powerful, all knowing, I would make it mandatory that everybody live at least a year in a country that has a different language and a different religion. I think that would bring everybody much closer together. One, you're forced to live outside of your comfort zone, and two, you learn very quickly that despite our differences, we're much more similar than we are different.
Right. Yeah. And then when it was time to come back to the States, did you go back to Greensboro, or did you come straight to Richmond where you're at today?
Well, I went to, well, it's actually Midlothian, right outside of Richmond. That's where my wife is from. And so once I signed my last contract, I knew that was going to be my last contract.
Okay.
And so my whole mindset was I won 1 championship as a pro. I wanted to end on with the championship, and my last game was a loss in the championship game. So that's bittersweet. But Ricardo, long story short, Ricardo's wife also went to Old Dominion. My wife and Ricardo's wife went to Old Dominion. They're both from Midlothian, Virginia. So
wow.
Ricardo retired a little bit before me, and he was home. He had already started his own training business. And to be honest with you, I did not want to move here. I did not want to move to Midlothian, Virginia. But my wife, she sacrificed a lot. She sacrificed a lot. Coming overseas, raising a family overseas, being away from her family. And so she wanted to be closer to home. And that was fair. And I also thought that, I could team up with Ricardo and we could build something together. And that's exactly what we did.
Right. And that's cool. And Ricardo, when you listen to this episode, hey, I got you on the list, to come on here on a future episode. If you could put in a little word there to get Ricardo on.
Oh, for sure. Oh, he just texted me today. I'll definitely let him know.
All right. Well, thanks. Yeah. And so the thing is, now are you coaching high school or is it with the AAU? It's high school age.
Well, this is basically what happened. I come home. Me and Ricardo are really focused on skill development, training. A lot of things that we saw in Europe, we came back and we're like, hey, man, the youth have lost like the fundamentals and the know-how, and like this has turned into everybody playing one-on-one. And we're like, hey, we have to figure out a way to infuse our knowledge into this space, right? And so parents start asking us to do teams. We really didn't want to do teams, and so that turned into us doing teams. And shortly before we started doing teams, so I have 4 daughters. My oldest daughter at that time when we got back was in 4th grade. Okay. And she was playing rec basketball. I'm sitting at the rec game like every other parent, sitting beside my wife, just watching the game. And all of a sudden, my wife turns and looks at me and she's like, "You're just going to sit over here and watch this?" And I was like, yes. Like, yes. I mean, what am I supposed to be doing, right? You can go out there and help them. And I'm like, I had never thought about coaching. Definitely didn't think about coaching girls. And so needless to say, the next year I'm out there coaching these 5th grade rec girls. And I come out there with the paper in my pocket, like I'm this big time coach. I'm a pro. I'm going to teach these kids how to do this. And after about 3 minutes, I balled all that up, threw it in the trash can. And I'm like, okay, ladies, this is a basketball, right? And so that kind of started my journey. And then shortly after that, I was working with a small group of girls. And then their parents started saying, "Don't you want to start an AAU team?" And I was like, "No, I don't want to start an AAU team." And then Ricardo was like, "Come on, man. You got daughters. You're already coaching rec. Don't you want to do this?" I'm like, "Lord." So then I started coaching a group of 6th graders. My oldest daughter was a 5th grader at the time. And so at that time, our organization was affiliated with Boo Williams. So we got tournaments down there. We go to Boo Williams. And I never forget that first tournament. We played 3 games. Each game we scored 9 points. The other team scored 40 plus, right? So we're getting the doors blown off of us. The kids are on the court looking at me like a deer headlight. The parents in the stands looking at me like, I thought you was a pro. You know what I mean? And so, so I called a parent meeting and I was like, look, I can't promise you we're going to win any basketball game. But I will promise you that if you're patient, I'm going to teach them how to play basketball. And so that's when I really started like taking it seriously and like looking at what I have. How do I teach them these concepts? What's the best way to teach them? A lot of research on the internet. I learned a lot from rec coaches, just how they communicated with the kids, right? And so that's when I started figuring out, it's not about what you know, it's how you get the information to them, right? And so I started doing that year after year. And then by the time my daughter was a 4th grader, got in 7th grade, at this time she was doing softball and basketball. My wife goes to a softball camp at Manchester High School. The assistant AD there graduated from James River High School with her. And he's like, hey, our associate head coach is getting ready to move to Chicago. There's an opening. Do you think your husband will want to do it? And so she comes home and she tells me this, and I'm like, all right, my daughter's in the 7th grade. Couple years she'll be at Manchester High School. Okay, I think I can do this, and just kind of basically help reinforce what the coach is doing. So then I interview for the job. I get the job. 3 days later, the head coach is like, look, I'm pregnant with my first child. The baby's due in December. You're going to have to man this ship. I'm like, what? I'm like, okay. All right. So but this is my first time working with teenage girls. Teenage girls are completely different than 10-year-olds. So, but I fell in love with it. I fell in love with it. Girls listen, they pay attention. It's a different game. It's the game I played on the backside of my career when I wasn't as athletic. It's much more cerebral. And then the next year was 2020, was COVID, and the coach didn't come back. And the AD said, hey, do you want to build this program? And I said, I do want to build this program. And so this is my 5th year coaching. I love coaching these girls. A lot of these girls I was working with when they were 4th and 5th graders didn't even know that that I would be their head coach in high school one day, and that we lost in the state championship game last year. In overtime by 3 points. First time the school has ever been in the state championship. So now we got college coaches at our practices, and our big is number 77 in the country. And my daughter is a hell of an athlete, hell of a player in her own right. And all of the girls on our team, I'm just so proud and happy. And now I'm a proud girls basketball coach. But outside of that, I'm also the director of Pro Skills Richmond. So the guys that started Pro Skills, I played against them overseas in France. So me and Ricardo worked together for about 3 years. And then I started Pro Skills Richmond from scratch. And now we're a 17-team organization. And our mission is development, skill development, developing these kids. Like, I'm okay if our teams aren't good in the beginning. Let's go through the process of year after year improving and see where we go. So, yeah.
Well, since you're, head coach there for Manchester Girls, I work with Western Branch football, so we definitely came to Manchester there in the regional championship there in football. But with being a Manchester girls coach, do you come down to the 757 or have the 757 schools come to Manchester there when basketball season comes?
It depends on the season. Like Deep Creek will come up here and scrimmage us this year. We go to the CNU fall shootout every year.
Okay.
That's October 7th this year, so we'll be there. We came down to Churchland High School last year and played in the I can't think of the tournament. But it's a lot of schools come down there. We played Norview down there last year. So the regionals were at the Scope last year. So it is a lot of full circle. State championship game was in the Siegel Center. You know what I mean? It is just it's very interesting how life works.
Now, how was that with being a head coach? I know it's high school and you played, Old Dominion, but how was it here bringing your high school team there to a regional playoff tournament there at Scope, where you once played as a Monarch?
It's wow, like how life works in circles, you know what I mean? And I'm like, man, I played in this building and now I'm coaching my daughter in this building. You know what I mean? And, you try to explain that to you. She's 16 now, my oldest daughter. So
Right.
you try to explain that to her, like, look how amazing this is. And she's like, yeah, whatever, Dad. I'm like, okay,
Right.
okay, all right. But for me, it reinforces that I'm supposed to be doing this. That's what it does. Like I didn't set out to do any of this. I really feel like this is ordained for me. Like I only do things that I love to do. God has always provided a way for me to do the things I love to do. And so to me, that's confirmation when all of a sudden I'm walking on the same grounds that I once played in a more in a role where I'm teaching instead of playing. So to me, it's just confirmation that I'm where I'm supposed to be.
Yeah, and and when you talk about, earlier in the episode, you talk about, life school. I mean, not like when we were growing up, it was important here to have coaches be mentors, but especially now with, coaching student athletes, you definitely, of course, everybody wants to win and, make them be experts and get better, but then also you want to be there for them so they win at the game of life.
Yes, it's parallel. I mean, to me, I believe that sports it rivals the classroom. I know any teachers watching this, so I know some teachers are in the classroom, but I think the field and the court are the best classrooms. I think if you put kids in a space where they actually enjoy what they're doing, it opens the door for you to teach them everything. Everything. I mean, the 3-point line to the baseline is a protractor. It's a game of angles. Like, I
Right.
mean, there's so many things that you can learn. If the kid is in a space where they want to be, you can teach them anything. And so that's why I see myself as a teacher much more than a coach, or maybe they're both one and the same. But yeah, I think we're in a fortunate position as coaches to be able to lead and guide young people.
Yeah, well, hey, Rashid, I appreciate your time. I'm sorry we we went over, but definitely appreciate your time for sharing your story, talking about being a Monarch and what you're doing, what you're doing now, and especially something that, hey, I don't want to coach. I just want to watch watch your girls play, and then here you've become a high school coach and what you're doing there with Pro Skills Basketball Richmond, and keep going, and good luck there to Manchester girls basketball here this winter.
I appreciate it, man. We're going to be fighting to bring home a state championship this year. So we locked in already, preparing our mind, body, and spirit to go to war.
Yeah, yes, and here just a few days had the head coach of the Lady Monarchs, Coach Milton Jones, come on here recently.
Yeah, I've met her a couple of times. She seems like a great person. She actually has some ties with the AAU team that my daughter played with, Lady Strong, this summer. So everything keeps coming full circle. So she's been doing a heck of a job there at ODU, and I saw she just got an extension. So I wish them nothing but the best.
Yes. Yeah. And just to wrap up, I mean, I know that you coach, high school girls, which goes on the same time as, college, but, are you able to come down for Monarch football or Monarch men's or women's games when it is basketball season?
I came down last year for the alumni night on the boys' side. I'm definitely going to try to get down there for homecoming this year. And I told Shaman that I'll bring my daughter down there as well to try to catch a girls' game. So we're already running all of our kids play sports, softball, basketball, and then horse riding. I mean, we don't stop, man. So it's nothing. We might as well add another trip to the chaos.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
hey, with only being the 804, and if 64 is backed up, I mean 460, east.
Yeah.
Is it you gotta watch your speed, but it's not a
Yeah.
bad drive here
Not at
to
all.
the 757.
Yep. Not at all. I'm going to make the trip. I'll be there a couple times this year for sure.
All right. Well, hey, definitely appreciate your time coming on. And Monarch fans, this was Rashid Wright here with us this evening. So thanks again for your time, and talk to you later.